And so typically, this is a session that we bring to school districts, we bring to schools, we've done virtually, we've done in person. And the goal here is to have teachers truly understand that fluency is such a huge part of what we have to make sure we're putting in front of students instructional wise. With such a big conversation around explicit phonics instruction, sometimes we run the risk of forgetting that the whole purpose of phonics is to eventually be able to get all the way to comprehension and understand the text. So this is a really nice session to bring to teachers. I'm going to kind of walk you through it. I'm not necessarily going to have you can kind of experience it at the same time.
You know, I'm also in charge of our PD when it comes to the MLs.
Okay.
And we continually have every month in one of our early dismissals, we have we deliver PDs to teachers.
How many MLs do you have?
Right now, about 300, 302 maybe, and then some monitor, 100 plus monitor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what they all are instructed though on English, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's South Carolina.
Yes, I've got it as English only. And of course, ranging from 1 to 6 in really good.
Okay.
So the beautiful part about this topic is it applies to all students. Every student will benefit from explicit instruction. So with this, we usually start out with a quick quiz. I'm going to give you a quiz. Let's see if you know. All right, so starting with this first one, true or false? Fluency is an inherent reading skill. Just comes naturally. True or false? Good news is
in their language or in English?
In either.
Yeah.
It's just something that happens.
No.
Okay. There are 3 notions of fluency that researchers currently use. Okay, you're going to see as we go through the presentation. We assess fluency only by finding out the words per minute of the student. True or false?
No.
No, most teachers get that one right. And then the oldest definition of fluency dates back to 1908. It's interesting because this is one date that you will find. This is like those fun facts for trivia nights when you go out with your family. There is a date that goes back to 1908, but back in the 1800s, they started talking about fluency of speech and fluency of language. So that goes back actually even further to 1908.
And that's why I think when I say fluency, more of language.
Yeah.
Reading.
And so when you talk about back in the 1800s, they were talking about being a fluent speaker. Obviously, if you're a fluent speaker, you're going to find that your fluency is going to be connected to your fluency in reading as well. So all of our learning comes from this resource. So again, if you're thinking about professional development for teachers, this is a brand new PD Essentials title. And I'm going to show you what we can do with those. But basically, it's written by Lynn Coolidge, Tim Rosinski. Everybody knows Tim Rosinski. Yes, you can take it with you. And David Harrison. And basically, the thought is here, as teachers are going back to the idea that, oh, wait, fluency has to be taught. It gives a number of lessons and tools and strategies that teachers will be able to use in their classroom. So a lot of times what I share with teachers is it's not really, it's a professional book, but at the same time, it is something you can use in classroom. So the training you're doing today with teachers is based pretty much on this lesson, the first 2 sections. But all the rest of it are lesson plans. It can be done in classroom, explicitly, in small group settings, with text that we could use, that can be used right in the classroom. So I like to think of it more as a resource than necessarily like a pedagogy book. It's like a combination of both. Okay. Now, this is Tim Rosinski. He is one of the writers. Most teachers recognize Tim Rosinski's name. He's been around a long time, but this is also where we get the idea of this bridge. Fluency is a bridge between comprehension and decoding. And I like to make sure teachers get a chance to hear from him. So I'm going to play a quick audio because, again, even he emphasizes the fact that it applies to all learners.
Some competencies. So the next slide, probably the most popular one is phonics, word decoding, word study. We all know from the recent podcasts that have come on like Solo Story and such that phonics is important. And we certainly certainly do not disagree with that. But here's the problem: we want to teach phonics, but all by itself phonics by itself will only yield short-term gains on reading tests that by the time children get into fourth grade, fifth grade, whatever gains they may have gotten are washed out. And why is that? Next slide. The answer there is, well, at least the partial answer is fluency. I'd like to say that fluency is a bridge from phonics, there at the top down to comprehension. Fluency is the ability to read words automatically or effortlessly so you can pay attention to comprehension. And it's also the ability to read with an expressive voice that reflects the meaning of the text. But if it's been neglected, what happens is many of our children don't get to cross that bridge. And they never get to that point of full comprehension, full competency when it comes to reading.
So one of the questions I like to pose to teachers is this: how can all students benefit from fluency instruction? Because I think everybody understands we need phonics instruction, but it's the fluency piece, even for our multilingual learners, that's going to be what helps them be able to move through text at a pace that allows them to actually comprehend what they're reading, right? And so then thinking about what tools does your district and schools currently have to address the need? Again, a lot of times we have resources that support the phonics piece, but without the application and connected text, then we're not having that bridge take place. And so a lot of what Benchmark emphasizes, and Dr. Wiley Blevins, you'll see his picture, he emphasizes the need to have high quality materials of connected text that hold students accountable, not just for the phonics, but also helping bridge that piece to fluency. And then that takes us to our agenda. So when we first like to start out is just making sure we have a clear understanding of what do we mean by fluency, right? So we go back to the science of reading and understanding that yes, all students need and deserve to have those word recognition strands addressed in every single grade, every student. The goal is to make sure that all of these strands, notice it starts getting tighter, this is where fluency lives, right? It's when all of these skills start working together in a much more tight fashion, that's where the fluency then leads us to the skilled reading. What happens is we kind of live with these strands separately, and this is where we've got to work to if we're ever going to get to the skilled reader. Now, when we think about what every student needs, no matter the population of students, phonemic awareness, we know that. We also know that they need that explicit phonics instruction. Fluency is right there in the middle. Go figure, it's a bridge. Which then, of course, means we have to have explicit vocabulary instruction for words that don't necessarily follow the phonics rules, and then understanding of new words, and then comprehension, of course. Yes, English words. Now, the next question I like to pose to teachers is it in the standards? Because every state we have to teach the standards, and it is. In the state of South Carolina, it starts in kindergarten. They actually start bringing in not just the word automaticity and accuracy, but they start bringing in the word prosody by second grade. And so a lot of times when we think about fluency, we're thinking, can they get the words right on the page? But it's more than that. And it's more than that for our multilingual learners. We want to get them past just reading the words on the page. We want them reading as expressively as every other reader in the class. It just might take them a little longer because they get to do the language acquisition piece too. All right, so we like to define what fluency is. So no surprise here, we're reading accurately with freedom from word recognition problems. It's automatic, so it's easy. I'm able to recognize the words at a pace that's not making it seem like I'm belaboring it. And then smoothly with what you see there, that prosody, expression, and intonation. So it is 3 parts. If you think back to that question, it is 3 parts, or 3 notions of fluency. It's the accuracy, you can see it here. It's the accuracy, the rate, and the prosody all working together. Okay?
By the way, you guys are posting this on PowerPoint, whatever portal they are.
So thinking about accuracy, we can start there. Once again, quoting Tim Rosinski, obviously we have to have a certain level of accuracy in our reading if it's going to make any sense. If I'm reading all the words wrong, well, that's a problem. So accuracy is important. And if we look here, here's our definition of it. It's making sure kids are decoding with little effort. It's that strong understanding of the alphabetic principle, which one thing I will give a nod to Benchmark about, especially with multilingual learners, is they're real good about making sure teachers recognize, does this sound transfer to this other language? And they provide a lot of supports for that, for those English language learners.
Yeah, and my challenge is I'm working with a Hispanic boy in 9th grade. He still has a hard time determining the letter E sound with the I.
Yeah.
In terms of sound, the I the I is A, like short I. And very hard to. The other day, I realized I work with a principal office and he still has a hard time pronouncing even the alphabet.
Because does that sound, some of the sounds don't transfer to it. In some cases, they have no reference point from where that sound is coming from. And so teachers don't always know that. And so we want to make sure that teachers understand, especially with multilingual learners, that background information of whether that sound even transfers. Because one thing about Benchmark is we're an asset-based we prioritize asset-based learning, meaning
Just South Carolina.
right. So the goal is let's capitalize on what they know, because they're coming in with lots of really great abilities coming in, but at the same time there are going to be some gaps. And as a teacher, I need to recognize that. So in this case,
Yeah, I've always been a coordinator, but I don't have enough teachers. Or teacher to share, and I said, you know what, okay, I'll work with them. But see, and it gives me really a first-hand knowledge of where they are, you know, and just kind of.
and it doesn't stop. The thing about multilingual learners is that need is going to continue throughout grade levels, because kids are coming from all different places, all the different times.
And mainstream teachers don't have the time to address the problem. Right. Even as simple as decoding.
Right, and with all the devices there, I feel like there's more, everyone has a language deficiency.
Yeah, even our American kids. Yeah.
So then thinking about the accuracy, it's also making sure our students have a knowledge of a large bank of high frequency words. Those are those rules that are going to follow the phonics rules. And we get to just tell kids, you have to remember this. Okay, now, here's a good question I like to pose to teachers, is about how accurate, what percentage of accuracy does a student need to have to really understand a text? How high do you think it needs to be? It's kind of a trick question because it's actually not up there. According to Jan Hasbrook in Reading Fluency, this is another one of our PD Essential books, she gives this number, 95% accuracy for them to truly have that a strong grasp of what that text is talking about. And with our earliest learners, I know you were talking 9th grade, but really you think about, I could have an early English language learner who is reading and working in 1st and 2nd grade level skills, they would say this, 97% accuracy. So even those high schoolers who are just new to the country learning the language, right, they're working in those primary phonics skills, they should have 97% accuracy. It's a big number.
My challenges, I see them once a week. Because I really understand into other schools.
But it's amazing that you can even go once a week. That's more than if you didn't go at all.
Yeah, and I feel like if I'm not there, nobody is addressing the issue.
He's not getting any of it addressed. So. Oh yeah, so then the thought would be making sure teachers understand that it's not just accuracy though, because remember there's 3 parts working together. So if we just focus on accuracy, is he getting it correct? Is she getting it correct? We're cutting them off at the knees when it comes to reading, because now we have to think of the rate, their ability to move through that connected text with fluidity, with a certain amount of speed. You've seen those readers, right? Especially multilingual learners. They might take some time to work through it because they're so focused on the decoding and the application of the phonics skills, but the goal is to not make it so they're spending so much time there. So automaticity plays a role because we want them to not be using so much of their cognitive effort, just trying to figure out what this is on the page so they can think about what it means. So that's the next piece we introduce to teachers. And the thought here is we do have some norms. Hasbrook and Tyndall back in 2017, they created this norm chart that allows teachers to basically kind of progress monitor students' ability to move through connected text at a relatively typical pace, I guess you could say. And so the thought would be for any, and you could do this with one of your students that you're working with now. You take that grade level passage, it should be a cold read, it's unpracticed, and you just time them for a minute. And then you can take a look at this chart and think, how is that student comparing to their peers? Now, if it's a 9th grader who's working in more like a 1st grade level text, you could go to where it says the 1st grade level, you know, the 1st grade text complexity piece, and be able to kind of compare, okay, I know he's working in these particular skills. How is he comparing to other kids who would be working in those same skills? And it gives you an idea of where he should fall for fall, winter, and spring. Now, one thing we really emphasize to teachers is this could vary. because we know, depending on the content, the interest in the text itself, my own background knowledge on that topic, could impact how quickly I move through the text, because some of those concepts are new to me. And so we really have to consider, when we are putting text in front of kids, that could impact how quickly they're able to move through that particular text. If that student of yours loves baseball and is a baseball expert, oh, he's going to move through that text a lot faster than if I put something about basket weaving in front of him. Okay. Last but not least, right? Because automaticity, we don't want that happening. We don't want them just racing through the text, because that could mean something completely different. It's all about the prosody too. The way a student's interacting with the text usually comes out with their expression and their prosody. So when we think about prosody, and this is something we emphasize with our English language learners, it should sound like natural spoken language when we read. It also means I'm thinking as a reader how loud I am, how slow I am, the expression in my voice as I move through the different pieces of the text, my phrasing, my intonation, expression, and pauses. And we like to throw this in front of teachers. I want you to hear this reader. Have you ever heard a reader like this before?
We have a student without a question from James and Jim. She lifted the horse's foot with the horseshoe and rushed it while she dropped it into the bottom line and began to stir the pot. So the first half of the line, she had pursuits and claimed Jimmy. It's almost ready for the next for something on potato to do the trick. I have potato fried the he fetched the potato and they added it to the soup.
What do we notice about that reader?
Just breathe.
She's on a mission to get to that end. She's got her automaticity. She's got her accuracy. But Lord have mercy, girl, you don't know what you're reading. You're just right. And the goal is for all of our learners to recognize it's not a race to the end. The goal is to interact with that text to really deeply comprehend it. So when we think about disfluency, we make sure to share with teachers different signs of disfluency. You heard it in what we just heard. Super fast, she was very monotone. You could tell she wasn't really paying attention to the punctuation. There were characters talking there. You couldn't hear any expression in the character's speech. So automaticity and accuracy are there, but how does it still impact her comprehension?
I don't know whether she understood what she read.
Right. You're just read. You can read. Check. Right? And so all of our learners need to understand that just because you can move through the text, if you're not thinking about it and there's no prosody there, it's a sign that you're not truly making sense of what you're reading. Okay? So I like to throw this out there for teachers. So everyone encounters texts that present difficulties and all respond in predictable ways. I think sometimes we forget what it is to be a striving reader who doesn't have all of the skills and tools in our toolbox. So I want you to read that out loud. Go.
What's the word? Interstitial lung disease is typified by insidious neurologic perturbation in the alveolar architecture, wherein a very fibroproliferates culminate in fibrosis and subsequent disruption of pulmonary gases.
All right, time's up. Here you go. Let's do a fluency check.
Oh, that word.
Okay, here we go. How would you rate your
struggling?
Right. How would you rate your accuracy, your automaticity, and your prosody there?
Not easily in some of the medical terms, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The difference is, right, at least you have enough tools in your tool belt to be able to, you have enough phonics tools to be able to just decode those words. You also had enough word study knowledge to know it had something to do with the medical field. But if I go to this question, we're going to be, right, that's what's happening to our readers. And imagine a multilingual learner who some of those English words they don't even know yet. It's a really good, anytime we do presentations like this, we try to put our teachers back in the minds of what our students are experiencing, right? Imagine if I were to switch that to Spanish, right, and have some of our teachers feel what it is to have to make the translations in your mind.
I usually start off with asking them to read a Filipino text. And then I say, okay, so here's a page.
And they might have enough information for different cognates. They can pull some words.
Can I stick some English words in there? And
right, and that's what our students are experiencing.
And you ask them, how do you feel? This is how our kids feel.
Exactly.
You know, if they're reading fibrosis.
I read fibrosis. I wasn't sure. I think because I watched Grey's Anatomy, I know what that is. All right, so some of the disfluency signs you just experienced, I experienced, right? Take a look at these. Sound familiar to what you were experiencing? And you definitely did this. We all did this. Everybody does this. What's that say? Right? Relying on each other for support. We know that this is going to impact a student's comprehension. So why is this so important? I love this graphic. So Tim Rosinski, notice it's Tim Rosinski again. He says less fluent readers expend their mental resources and time decoding words rather than comprehending text, leading to frustration and a lack of motivation. And I saw this graphic on LinkedIn and I stole it. So this is basically what's happening in the mind of our readers. Here you have your fluent reader versus the struggling reader. And that yellow and that red is showing how much of their cognitive capacity is being used. So as a struggling reader, look how much of my brain is being used up just trying to make sense of what's on the page. And then you have the nerve to ask me what I read, right? Multilingual learners are the same because now we add in the fact that they don't even necessarily know all of the words, what they mean just yet. They haven't made that language transfer yet. So really just trying to make sure teachers understand how important that fluency piece is. Now, this again is another resource. We don't have a copy of it with you today, but this is another resource that's really helpful to teachers in understanding this topic. The goal is, though, is what does it mean for our instruction? And here's what's kind of scary. Tim Shanahan, another Tim in the world of reading, says comparable amounts of time in primary grades should be devoted to phonics and other literacy competencies, including fluency. But watch this. Oh, it's gone. The quote's gone. It disappeared for some reason. Second grade teachers say that they spend 3 times more instructional time on phonics than they do fluency. First grade says it's 4 times more. It's just something that's kind of overlooked. Like you said, time. Right? I'm more focused on the decoding piece. And then when you get to the upper grades, it's not really happening very much at all. And I can only imagine as you get into like high school, because they're not explicitly teaching reading at all anymore.
Their content.
Yes. So then we move into this section, equitable fluency instruction. And I like to have teachers think about this. What does equitable fluency instruction mean? What would you say it means? No pressure. That's the only person in the room.
So they're spending time, teaching kids how to read, and should be equally with teaching kids how to comprehend. Yes, I know.
And it goes back to the idea of that equity piece, recognizing that all my students are in different places, and everybody might need different scaffolds to all reach the end goal. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to have kids read grade level text. But what I need to do to scaffold for you might be different than you and different for you. So we present them with the idea, and this is a real long, meaty quote that basically says kids should have all different types of text put in front of them. There should be grade level complex text put in front of them. And then they should have the opportunity to just pick up books that they love. All of that is helping just expose them to the different types of text. But the piece about putting grade level text in front of them, and I think about that 9th grader that you have, how that 9th grader must feel having high school complex text in front of them, and if there's not scaffolds provided, they probably just stare at it.
So every time I pick him up from his class, his head is falling. And then he smiles when he sees me, because there's probably like somebody now that will identify what I need and help me. But it's so sad to see him use my head.
Yeah.
Just every time I pick him up.
Actually use my time, so I'm not just sitting here. So the next pieces of this presentation are all about just practical solutions, practical strategies teachers can use on a daily basis to help address this fluency instructional piece. One of those is how important just reading aloud to kids are. But the key is, a lot of times we're reading aloud to kids, right? And in every grade level we hear teachers read. The question is, are you pointing out fluency pieces? So I love what Tim Rosinski says here. We talk to teachers about, first we model fluency, but why not, I love this part, why not read to children fluently and then talk about it? For example, did you notice how I changed my voice when I became a different character? Think back to the little girl who just kind of blew through the text, didn't sound any different for the character. Imagine it when I'm reading aloud. Hey, I'm about to read a character part. Watch how my voice changes. What were you thinking when I had this long dramatic pause in my reading? Right? So just pointing out those little pieces is a simple move teachers can do. So when kids are listening to the teacher read, they're paying attention to all those little nuances we do with our voice naturally as readers. Here is what Dr. Wiley Blevins, that was the book that the professional book that's there. And he also talks about the fact about how important explicit phonics instruction is. That's what he talks about at the top. And how to get to comprehension, fluency has to be taking place. And we have to make sure that we're providing that fluency instruction for kids. So here's one example, and you have the sample in front of you. We like teachers to think about, like, how can connected text kind of bridge decoding and fluency? So this is the Dynamax decodables line. And if you open up, I think you have the right title. Yeah. So if you open up to this page, I'm just going to open up to you. If you take a look at like this page, and you think about, okay, this is a student who'd be working on phonics skills. But how is fluency also being addressed in this text? So, like, what do you notice?
I like the fact that there's graphics.
Very colorful, right? So engagement is half the battle. So very engaging. They don't look at like your typical decodable. But even looking at the sentence types, right? We've got characters talking, but we've got questions. We have a one-word exclamation. There's having this back and forth conversation between Dad and Ren. And so if you go to the front cover of this book, this is how you know the decoding is taking place too. These books allow you as a teacher to make sure that we know exactly what skill we're focusing on. We're also building knowledge and vocabulary, so this is all about like knowledge building in places like Japan and things like that. But then now, as you go into the text, I'm getting a chance to take what I know about that phonics skill and put it into a text that's engaging, and then addresses that fluency piece as well. Okay. Other strategies, and these are just some fun things. I'm going to make you do this. I know we don't have a lot of time, but most people like this one. Other things we can do with kids with all ages, right? Especially when we think about those learners who are just learning English basics. We can hit fluency and prosody at this, or excuse me, we can hit prosody at the same time. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to recite the alphabet and numbers as a conversation. Go ahead. D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q. All right, so little fun activities we can do with even our youngest learners. Here's another one I like. Let's do this one. Kazoo. Kazoo. Kazoo.
That's great, because they don't know punctuations.
Right.
Especially in Spanish, there's better punctuation. In the sense that sometimes they have a question mark at the beginning, or sometimes they don't put periods.
Yes, and so the goal is, even in our decodables, making sure there's different types of sentences that allow them to practice not just the phonics piece, but now also even prosody. And then this one's fun. I like this one. Marie, I like this one. Ready? I am sad. I am sad. I am sad. You're so sad. All right, and then encouraging teachers that they could be reading these to a friend. It's an activity they can do with their friends, recording themselves so that they can kind of reflect on their own ability for that prosody. But then there's other strategies. So we talk about audio assisted reading. So with Benchmark, all of our texts come in a digital format as well, which allows them to
country. And Jeannie and Ernie were staying there in a small white house on the top of a hill. Grandma and Grandpa's house.
So when I'm a teacher in the classroom and I can't sit with the student and read it with them, the audio recording allows them to hear that assistance in that one-to-one correspondence. Other strategies we share is this. Here's one. I want you to read this. Let's read it out loud together. Everybody read. When students repeat their reading, their amount of word recognition errors decreases, their reading speed increases, and their oral reading expression improves. Let's read it again. When students repeat their reading, the amount of word recognition errors decreases, their reading speed increases, and their oral reading expression improves. Let's read it again. Can you guess what the strategy is? Repeated reading is an easy strategy with any text we're using with students. Whether it's the decodable text, sometimes teachers think I have to keep putting 50 million books in front of kids. No, you can use high quality books, have them read them multiple times with you, with me, audio recording with a friend, and that's going to also increase my fluency as well. And my motivation.
I do that with a website that's called breakingnewsenglish.com, and it's just news articles around the world and into different levels. And we read out loud a news article that comes from Japan or wherever, and I do that with them.
Yeah, the rereading piece is powerful. A kid who couldn't access the text the first day we read it, and I helped work through it. By day 3, I have much more confidence, much more motivation, like Marie said, because now I'm familiar with the words. Other strategies, because we often have kids who look like this during our instruction in reading. So other strategies that not only can be engaging for kids, but also really good fluency strategies include echo reading. This basically means as I read a sentence or read a line, poetry is really good for this, you repeat it. So repeat after me. Ella telephone. Once there was an elephant who tried to use the telephone. No, I mean an elephant who tried to use the telephone. So you can see how a strategy like that can be helpful because you, especially with multilingual learners too, because they're getting to hear it first. It creates a much more safe moment for me as a reader because you've read it. My eyes are on the text, but now I can repeat it to you, and that allows me to have that fluency practice as well.
So when we say if I order a book, do they have access to the digital activities?
Yeah. So then we can also go this route. So choral reading would be another option. So whereas echo reading is you repeat after me, which is a safe way to start, you could then move to choral reading. And now that we've read it once together, we can go back and read it again. Now I'm doing repeated reading as well. And we can read this together. Ready? Read. Long ago in India, 5 blind men traveled to the Raja's palace, where that wise ruler kept an elephant. Now whisper. The first blind man gently touched the elephant's trunk. An elephant is like a large snake, he proclaimed. We'll stop there. Another easy strategy to work into my instruction, whether it's whole group, small group. But again, safe way to include all kids and hold everybody accountable for reading that text. Now, how would you say that those two any of the strategies we've looked at so far, promote equitable fluency instruction? How could a text like that decodable text, promote equitable fluency instruction?
Well, because you're doing it as a class, it's not threatening to everybody as either advanced or low level. In terms of equity,
everybody can access it. Right, absolutely. So then a few other strategies. I want you to read these words as they appear on the screen. This might sound like a reader you know. Sound like any word color students we've heard of before, right? They're reading it, but it's hard to pay attention to what I'm reading. This is what it actually says. Think about the difference. So the difference is you're reading phrases. The last student was reading almost like staccato, right? My husband's a musician. I know that word. So the goal would be phrases. Teaching kids phrased reading. This be done in whole group, can be done in small group. I take any text I'm working with with a student, and I can go through it, and I can pre-plan where I want the student to try to read through. Right? So imagine we combine some of our strategies. We combine echo reading, we combine choral reading, we combine a repeated read and the phrase reading, because as we're working to get to that phrase, I incorporate all these different strategies in whatever text I'm using, even if it's a decodable text, and now we're helping students really just get the understanding of how this prosody piece would work as well.
Because I do learning blocks, and I very seldom see kids reading or having a teacher go through this different strategies of teaching them to read. But these are great ideas, even to look out whether the teachers are employing some of these.
And a lot of times teachers have it in their toolbox, they just forget. And so the goal is to bring those back out.
Things they have to do.
Yes. So thinking about
also confirmation that what they're doing, if they are doing that, this is the things you should be doing. Oh yeah, I'm doing
throw in this little letter. You'll notice at the bottom who it's from. I'll give you the quick gist. Basically, it's a teacher writing the benchmark saying, hey, I like to do this thing where I have you read a paragraph, and then you read a paragraph, and then you read a paragraph, aka round robin. And research says, no, we're not doing that. Because think about, especially for multilingual learners, how much angst that student feels. Oh my goodness gracious, that's not a safe environment. So the thought would be, here's a better way. So that takes us to Reader's Theater. And actually, we usually let them hear from it, but Reader's Theater is another option that we put in front of teachers and ours. We have one here now. What's fun about these is these are decodable Reader's Theater. And so you have two different versions. You have the upper grades, right? And all of our pieces teach knowledge at the same time as fluency. They're grade 2. Yeah. So we have so we have the K2 version, but then you also have the 3-5 version. And depending on the version you're looking at, all of them come with a lesson card. And they also allow you to mix your groupings, so that way you can decide who gets what part based on the complexity of the character part.
So how are these packets? They're listed when you order them. How are they listed in the catalog? Oh, I can show you. I'll show you that. Yeah. This one. Here's what I like about this, right? Because remember, we want to always think about fluency. So a lot of times with these, where it's the fluency, it's the coding, if you're connecting text with the Reader's Theater, we add in a fluency booster in K2, which is a fun little activity kids can do, where I've got to say this sentence in this tone, say this sentence in that tone. And these are lines literally from the actual play. And then the other grades we provide fluency over impact. Like middle school? Yes. So in this case, in the fluency rubric, at the end of this, not only am I doing a graphic rubric, but I'm also reading my self-expression, see what phrases to use. So it becomes kind of a self-evaluation piece as well. And again, all these come with lesson cards to get your groupings up so that you're not only having Reader's Theater. So you're doing coding, fluency, all bringing it together. And it's not right. That's not fun. So I'm thinking about how you can understand e-commerce. Yeah. Yeah. And then allow these, right? We have multiple ways. We have multiple different, like reading part of the decodable. Yeah. And also like this is kindergarten, early kindergarten style decodable. We're building knowledge because it has to do with like math and things like that. We can see the visibility of the text. And so then, when I go through, you can work through this again as a teacher. You can find this with the strategy, even for your newcomers, with the strategies we talked about here. I explicitly taught lines, but taught the lines. I'm listening as I sound each word out and coding it. We work through it once. That's not reason. We can do echoing, we can do coding. By the time we get to the end, next student is going to have that success. And then what I really like is we also have activities as well. So we have a comprehension checkpoint. We're going to do some encoding practice with it, some fluency pieces, and then some rereading fluency. Okay. So when you think about the different activities, because again, we really like to present this information to teachers and schools and things like that. What are some activities that you could totally see helping promote that equitable fluency instruction? Reading or repeating and studying and everything. See, I haven't taught lower grades and or reading or recording itself, and I'm working with this one kid. It's very, very basic. And sometimes I just use YouTube for him to listen to the sounds aside from listening to me. But all of these, I was thinking.
Well, we definitely here to support.
I just did for one of our early dismissals in the FPP. You could always relate this to teaching MLs, even though it's reading.
Well, we have some where we call it, but we have a piece that we have all that.
And we do have Spanish language decodable as well, if that was ever to be. But I know for us, we're trying to bridge the gap to.
Yes, but, and helping them read in Spanish will help them read in English, but,
Yes.
unfortunately,
All right, so I think our time in here is up.
yeah.
My understanding
we
is.
shared you guys, we shared all this.
Yeah, we have more things for you. You want to walk with us? We can help give you something.
Yeah, oh, wow.
I'll push this
Very,
back over
very,
here.
very useful for me.
Push it.
Yeah.
Was that up there too? I just want to stop this